Welcome to a very special episode of Quiver the Green Arrow podcast. I am one of your hosts, Michael Cohen.
I'm your other host, Amanda Kunkin. And of course, we're here with the star of Arrow, Stephen Amell. Hi, Stephen.
Hello.
Thanks for coming here and being here today to talk to us.
You're most welcome. Very convenient, as we were talking about, that you guys are in Vancouver.
It is. It's a great city, you know. It's only minimal rain today, so this is something we have to deal with all the time.
Just kind of generally wet. It's not actually raining yet.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you walk outside and you feel the various degrees of the rain. This is totally passable and usable. This is what it was like yesterday. We were filming on the island yesterday, and this is fine.
Okay.
This we can handle.
Nice. It's true, because it snowed a couple days ago, and then it's fine again. I like it.
Yeah,
it's
the snow's almost gone now.
We haven't run into the snow when we're shooting, and there's been a couple of times where we've been scouting episodes, and we've scouted locations that are just covered in snow. And then when we've got there to shoot, they haven't, the snow's melted. So
Have you ever had any horrible experiences doing outside stuff in Vancouver?
last year we shot episode 14, which was our island episode, The Odyssey, and we shot in Widgeon Park, something like that, out in Coquitlam, which is another word that I butcher. And man, it was +2 on the first day, and it rained, and then it was just right around 0 on the second day, and it poured, and it was just 3 consecutive days of it just rained, and we ended up block shooting a bunch of stuff and just trying to get through it. The only thing about that is the production value when you're in that type of weather and in those types of conditions. I mean, we could never afford that production value. That's something that Vancouver provides for us. So it's worth it in the end.
It is. It's worth it.
It does. It definitely shows up on screen.
Yeah.
The show is one of the best looking shows on the CW for sure, and just in general. I mean, it's one of my favorite shows to watch visually. We talk about it all the time on the podcast. The transitions from the city to the island are always these awesome, like really cool, blocked out, director of photography type moves.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny that you should mention that. When we really got a handle on those was episode 16 last year, which was directed by Glenn Winter, who is our principal director of photography. And he had these interesting ideas for, camera shots that would sweep from one spot into another spot, and we would go from the present day to the island. And that was also around the same time that the producers of the show, when we started off, and they would say this too, it was kind of like, okay, we know we have to tell this island story, but how are we going to tell it? And then early on, things clicked a little bit, and when I got pitched the second season, knowing what we knew from the first, the island story was totally fleshed out. We knew exactly where we were going from point A to point B on the island, and that's allowed them to tie in what's happening on the island with what's happening in present day, which I've noticed people commenting on and enjoying, as opposed to it just being sort of this standalone story.
Yeah.
We're starting to see ties to what's happening in Starling City right now.
Yeah, cohesive storytelling is always something that I point out in Arrow. I think they do that really well. And last year it was really thematic, which was kind of nice. So you would have the island stories that would, I think, tie in with the main storyline a little bit. But you're right, this year definitely is a lot.
Well, I mean, not to pull the curtain back too far, but when you're making a television show, especially when you're starting, the first, we've shot 10 episodes before a single episode is aired. We've shot 10 episodes before anybody knows who pops on screen, who doesn't, before anyone knows who the fans like. Right. Emily Bet Ricards was in episode 3, and it was because the producers liked her that she was, then in 5 and 6 and started to show up more. But, it was, people didn't see her until we were already on to the 10th episode, 11th episode. And, you really are taking a little bit of a shot in the dark when you are starting a show, because what works and what doesn't work is just trial and error. So I guess the point is that going into season 2, you take all of that knowledge and it allows for a much more streamlined version of the story.
Do you have a similar crew that's working here? So you shot in Vancouver for season 1 as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so season 2, do you keep a lot of the same people on board? And
we kept almost everybody. We've added a few key people. Kim Miles is a new DP that is our DP when Glenn Winter is directing. And he will also be our DP when Glenn Winter is DPing the pilot for the Flash series.
Ooh, yeah.
Might be breaking news. No, but no, Kim is great. But one of the amazing things was that Smallville ended in
2010
2 years, I think,
or
before
2011.
2010,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of the crew that we have worked a long stretch of time on Smallville, especially the camera operators, a lot of the same crew. And so, they wrapped their show, and then they all had maybe 6-7 months to do something else, and then, late 2011, we started hiring for our pilot, which shot early 2012. So, they got a little bit of a break. They got refreshed. They're getting to live in the same genre, but in a very different version of it. Mm-hmm. So everyone's pumped because getting on a show that does well is a good job, and there's a lot of them that had a long stretch, got to take a little bit of a vacation, and came back recharged and refreshed and ready to go.
Yeah, I think you can see it in the show that the crew is they're veterans, right? Like you said, they shot Smallville for 10 years and then transitioned into Arrow, and you can see that it's they're very similar in some ways, but I always like to think of Arrow as the evolution of what Smallville did. Like, Arrow couldn't be on TV if shows like Smallville and Buffy the Vampire Slayer hadn't been there first.
Right, which is not to say that it's better, but everything is sort of the next.
It's just a step forward.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Actually just jumping off of that a little bit, one of the things we like the most about the show as well is that it's not just about Green Arrow. So there's this whole ensemble that comes with not only the crew that are involved, but also the cast as well. Do you feel a responsibility sort of being at the head of an ensemble, or do you really feel an ensemble cast environment when you're on set?
Well, I feel like I'm at the head of the ensemble, but there's no value to a good hero in a show if there's not a good villain. Do you know what I mean? All the best superhero movies are made by the villain. That's what elevates the material. And in a similar way, I think people were already sick of Oliver sitting in the Arrow cave and brooding to himself before in episode 4 Diggle shows up and goes, "Dude, you are messed up." Right? And that was a new opportunity. And then Felicity shows up. So. I do feel a responsibility at the head. I feel like it is my responsibility when somebody like Katie Lotz comes on the show this year. I want to take the time to make her feel comfortable, to introduce her to everybody. But the best part about this year for me has been that episode 2 was really a Lance episode. And episode 5 was Sarah's episode. Episode 6 was Diggle's episode. Episode 7 was more sort of ensemble, but episode 8 was Grant Gustin's episode, right. And he's a new guy coming on the show. I mean, that's a lot of pressure. Mm-hmm. Moving forward, episode 11 is very much Laurel's episode, and she's great in it. And then so I really enjoy it because there are always going to be moments where, for a particular episode, I'm just in every scene and I know that I am working every day. Yeah. But episode 12 as well, we explore the Lances, and again, I love our ensemble. I think it's incredibly talented, and I mean, there's still more that I want to know about it. Like, I'm always peppering the producers on things, because we don't know a ton about Felicity, for example.
That's true.
And I got a little bit of that backstory. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I can't wait until we get to that.
Well, it's interesting because Felicity is a character from the comics.
That's right.
And I know that a lot of our listeners didn't really know that because in the comics she's sort of one of the side supporting characters.
Right.
in the now I've lost it. I think Firestorm. think is that the character? I think.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't look at me for that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's sort of a peripheral character in
That's
that.
right. Diggle is not a character,
and Diggle is
but
not.
is now.
Yeah, but has been brought into the comics, and some people are sort of
wanting him to become
a hero in his own right.
And I know they've done that with Smallville, right? They did that to Chloe's character, and there's potential for that, so that's exciting.
Well, our show is a meritocracy, and Emily came on the show in the 3rd episode, and Emily was awesome. So she just becomes part of the show. I mean, you don't want to stomp all over the canons and sort of the expectations of people that have read the comics their entire lives, but at the same time, we got to make a good show. And you don't want to bite the hand that feeds you, so to speak. If she comes on and she's good, then she should stay on the show. So, I think that will happen. That will continue to happen going forward. If someone comes out and acquits themselves on the show, then great. But if someone comes and it doesn't work, then the opposite happens.
Cool. We've got questions from our listeners.
We do.
So
before we go, I want to correct one thing. So there's 2 things. We're Canadian, and I kind of like that we're talking about temperatures and things. So I just wanted to apologize to all of our American listeners that we're going to have some Canadian.
That's very Canadian of you to apologize. We're talking in Celsius, and we may use the metric system, and no apologies are needed. We're in Vancouver.
Wait, that's true. And the second thing is you say the Arrow Cave. Now this is one thing that we really talked a lot on Quiver is that, bats live in a cave. It's a bat cave. But you keep your arrows in a quiver.
That's right.
So it should be the quiver.
It should be the quiver. It's technically the foundry.
It is technically the foundry.
Okay.
Which, when we shot the pilot, was an actual foundry.
Oh.
Like, we were out in, I don't know where the hell we were, but it was 1 degree Celsius outside, and it must have been below 0 in the actual foundry. And that was when we were shooting all the salmon ladder and all that. Like, it was, there's steam coming off of me for a very good reason. It was freezing.
Awesome. So no special effects there.
That's just all freezing actors.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Cool.
So we'll dive into some questions if that's all right.
Yeah, let's do it.
So Jason Ritter asks, what Green Arrow stories did you read to study for Arrow?
I didn't. I put a lot of trust in David Nutter principally, who directed our pilot, directed the Smallville pilot as well, is directing the Flash pilot, to really cultivate a good story. And Andrew Kreisberg and Mark Guggenheim had been involved with Green Arrow prior to that. The whole thing was being overseen by Jeff Johns at DC, and I trusted those guys. Now, once it was done, I got a big care package from DC Comics, principally with Green Arrow Year One, and I read that, and then I read Longbow Hunters, and I've since familiarized myself with the character, who has a very rich history in the pilot. I say, I want you to transfer, I can't remember how many $1 million into Starling City Bank account 1141, November 1941, which is when the character debuted. So it's a character with a rich history, and we're always trying to be cognizant of that.
There's always a lot of Easter eggs like that. Actually, we noticed that a lot in the first season.
Yeah. There are more Easter eggs than you even begin to realize.
I like in the episode where
you wear the prison suit.
Yeah, where the prison suit had the hex code for Oliver for Green Arrow's green. Like,
oh, really?
For the comics.
That you
See, I didn't even know that.
His green in the comics.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
I don't know who's the head of our Easter egg department, okay? But there must be somebody, because I feel like I'm pretty versed in all this stuff, and I probably catch 50% of it.
Yeah.
I feel they have fun. I think that's part of the awesomeness of your crew and the people involved in the show, is that everybody's trying to be involved in their own way, and
everybody's everyone's a
a
massive fan,
yeah.
right? So it's like it's when we shot the scene in The Scientist where I had shot with Grant already, but when Oliver Queen is meeting Barry Allen, like, everybody was there.
Oh.
David Nutter was there, Jeff Johns was there, Greg Berlanti was there, I think that was like, he's our main executive producer. I think he had been on set like one time before because he's so busy, right?
Yeah.
But everybody was there. There was like someone was doing a piece on Greg for the New York Times. It was like Video Village was this massive expanse, and but it's because they want to see Barry Allen meet Oliver Queen, and because they're fans, right? So.
Oh, very cool. So I have another question. So this is from Richard Catarino.
You gotta just
say them.
Mispronounce names.
Sorry,
it
Richard.
Happens.
So, do you want the Arrow universe to be connected to Man of Steel, or would you rather Arrow build its own thing? And also, Richard asked if you could shout out to his wife Lisa. So
is it like Lisa's birthday or something?
I don't know. She's a big fan, I guess.
Big shout out to Lisa's right. Of course, I would like them to have a shared. I would like them to have a shared universe. But the big distinction and the most important distinction for me is, and everybody on the show, by the way, is I'm not playing the television version of Oliver Queen. Katie Lotz is not playing the television version of Canary, and Manu Bennett is not trying to encapsulate the television version of Slade Wilson. Grant Gustin is not trying to do the television version of Barry Allen. We are trying to do the definitive versions. We are trying to put them on a level where if Warner Brothers and DC Comics decided that they wanted them to be a part of the movie, people would buy it, right? Whether that happens or not, that's not really our concern. Our concern is we have a lot of momentum going in our second season, and Greg has a very, very famous, at least in my head, saying of, you have a hit television show until you don't have a hit television show. So for me to look past, we're in the middle of shooting episode 14 right now, and it's a bear, as all the episodes are becoming. And for me to look past episode 14 would really be a disservice to the people that have been with us since, the fall of 2012. But I think that the characters that we are creating in our universe could stand next to Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck and Gal Gadot. Is that
Gadot? I think.
Gadot?
Yeah. It's a controversy.
I think that we could stand next to them and everybody would go, oh, good. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot actually, in just the caliber of the work that you guys are putting in. It's really impressive.
Well, it's tough sledding. I mean, we had 17 days to shoot the pilot, and then going forward, you have 8 days to shoot episodes that, I mean, are getting bigger all the time. And one of the things that I like is that because we only have 8 days, we have to be practical. Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't have time for huge stunt rigs and all this CGI. You don't have the money for it. You have to get down and get dirty and do things practically. And I think that produces some of the best stuff. Like in episode 8, when you saw me on a moving truck, it was because I was on a moving truck. And it was really cool. But I mean, we have to take the actors and we have to put them in that position, right? Which means that we have to hire actors that can do that stuff. And I think that's one of the things that makes the show, that makes the show resonate with people.
Excellent. That probably leads in well to the next question, actually.
AJ Thomas asks, how much time each week do you spend exercising? He wants to know specifically weightlifting and cardio. I think he might be looking to get into some vigilante shape. So
you know what? I'll tell you what. Not enough. I totally screwed myself because I got cast as Oliver Queen 6 weeks before we went to camera on the pilot, right? I was working on private practice at the time, and I had nothing to do. Like, they wrapped me out on private practice, and I had nothing to do but do parkour training, martial arts training, fight training, weight training, running, and so now, I tried to maintain the level that I got to in the pilot throughout the first season, and at a certain point I realized that it's simply impossible. So going into the second season, I do yoga now. I do
Very
power
Vancouver
yoga.
of
Okay, it's good, right?
I'm a big fan.
And I go to Y Yoga in Vancouver, and I do power yoga, and I find some time on a treadmill, or I find some time with weights, but my whole thing has been to not go through these big swings where I go on a fitness binge, and then I burn myself out and I have to pull back. It has been maintain a solid, responsible level of fitness, which is not difficult to do if you eat correctly and you get your sleep. That's the most important thing. And then, when I have a big shirtless scene, I just, you put a little extra effort into it, you know what I mean? So it really depends on the schedule, is the summation to that long-winded answer.
That's good. We'll just ask a couple more questions, if
Sure.
that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got Isaiah Stevens. This is one of my favorite questions, actually, that got sent in to go in. Would you ever consider competing in an archery competition with Jennifer Lawrence, who played Katniss in the Hunger Games, Jeremy Renner, who played Hawkeye in The Avengers, and Orlando Bloom, who's Legolas in The Hobbit and What would you do that?
Yeah, of course. I'm hyper competitive. The third or fourth day that I was training with my archery coach, Patricia, who's also from Vancouver. I was starting to shoot while I was walking and stuff like that, and on the move. And from about 30 feet away, while our director was watching, I sort of went on the move, and I fired, and I nailed a Starbucks cup that we had all set up. I was like, holy shit, really? And I enjoy doing it. And so I don't actually get to shoot that much, because there is nothing more dangerous on a film set than a bow and arrow. We have a protocol. It's like a booklet. I'm not even when we have we have special bows where I can draw it back, but the arrow is fastened. I'm still not allowed to aim that at people if we're within 20 feet of them, right? So logistically, sometimes we'll use a camera trick to make it look like I'm aiming at the person. Sometimes I'm doing a line reading to a tennis ball. But the point being is, I would love to be in that competition. You know what I mean? That would be great. I think that I would fare very well.
Okay. Do you think you'd win?
Yes.
Okay. Good. That's what we want to know. All
It's
right.
pretty definitive, I think. Zachary Caffrey Kerr asks, what do you think about...
So we need a question from a John Smith.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
What do you think about Arrow getting his eye mask and the costuming on the show? What's your favorite costume and your least favorite costume?
Well, my favorite costume is my suit. Colleen Atwood, who the first thing that I ever did after getting cast in the pilot was I went to Colleen Atwood's house in Los Angeles to get measured. Right, she was designing the suit, and I look up at the wall and I see these plaques that say congratulations on your Academy Award nomination. Wow. And then my eyes keep going, and I go, oh my God, those are Academy Awards, and I'd never seen one. They're just with Oscar sitting right there, and she designed a superhero suit that is incredibly practical. I can get dressed in that thing in 5 minutes, right?
Oh.
And I approached the mask with some trepidation, just because. Change is, but I think we found a way to make the mask a very organic part of the suit. It doesn't look like something new. You know what I mean? It looks like it could have been there all along. I like the tie-in to the fact that Barry Allen gave it. My least favorite costume, has got to be the process of putting the scars on. It takes 90 minutes, and there's just nothing that you can do. You just got to lay there. You know what I mean? And and then it takes like the 90 minutes to get it on are bad. The 35 minutes to take it off are kind of worse. You know what I mean? Because it's the end of the day. And I remember once we were doing a photo shoot for the CW, and I needed to get to a party, like an actual work commitment, and I was just like, guys, don't worry, I'll take the scars off. I can't. I gotta go. It took me like 3 weeks to get these things off. I had, especially the ones on my back and stuff like that. But you know, the stories of, you know, but it is a cool part of the mythology. So it makes it worth it. Again, it's worth it when you see it on screen.
Yes. Yeah, the scars have been a really big part of it, because each one of them, as we found out over the course of this last season and a half, has a plot point in and of itself. Which is funny, because I think if you go back to Lost, Jack had his tattoo, and everybody was like, oh, what's the big deal with the tattoo? And then they told the story about his tattoo, and everybody hates that episode.
Yeah, I hated that episode too.
But for you, like, every time we see these different things, it's like the tattoo with Russian on it.
The Bratva tattoo.
Yeah.
You know, the Chinese characters right here, and you know, something that we're going to explore, I think, this season is the shadow tattoo.
Yeah, so because you can tell that each one of them already has a story. They didn't just put it in there for flavor, and then it's gonna, you know, they're gonna have to figure it out later.
Well, I don't think they knew exactly where they were going with each one, you know. But that being said, I mean, you start with something and then you write your way out of it. But certainly the Bratva tattoo was something that we thought about early on, and you know, when we reference Anatoly Knyazev in, I think it was episode 10 in season 1, and then we pull him back and he's on the freighter, and then we see him in Russia and you know, in episode 6. That's a fist pump moment for the writing of the show and for me, because I, as a viewer, I really love that stuff.
Yeah, I think it speaks to that cohesiveness of the world again, right? People seeing each part that's put into makeup and
little payoffs like that. Yeah. Little payoffs like that make it worth it.
Make a huge deal.
Cool. Go ahead.
Do we have? Oh, we're gonna keep going. We've got one more. Okay, if that's all right. Thanks. This is great. Oh, this is a fun question. Okay, this is from Christine, who left her last name out of the question. She said, "Do you wish there were more sex scenes in Arrow? You have lots of lovely lady co-stars, and
I do. I got my fill of sex scenes when I played a prostitute on Hung, right? So it's not like I'm wanting. It's not like I've had a lack of them in my career, but there has sort of been a dearth of them this year, as opposed to last year. We've been too busy with action to do action. But there's one coming.
Okay. Ooh.
Yeah.
Spoiler.
There's one on the, you know, not so distant horizon, and it's you know, something that we haven't seen on the show yet in terms of or at least for Oliver.
Excellent. I like that.
Cool.
Spoiler.
Lewis Perry wants to know what hero you would like to see as a guest, like what superhero showing up as a guest star, because we've had the Flash show up, and he just wants to know who else would you want to show up, like if you had a number one at the top of the list.
Oh, if I had a number one, if I had a number one, it would be Batman, of course, you know, because just they would hate each other. You know what I mean? Like, they would hate each other, and it would be amazing, because so many people have always said that, you know, that Green Arrow was like a rip-off of Batman. Yeah. That I would just love some piece of dialogue where I'm learning about Bruce Wayne, and I learn that he's like a billionaire, and that he runs this company, and that he's a vigilante at night trying to clean up the streets of Gotham. And I'd love to just go, think of something original, Bruce. You know? That would be amazing. But who knows?
Nice. Cool. Very exciting. I think that's everything for questions.
I think you have one.
I have one more question.
Oh, good.
Yay! Sorry. Okay, it's from Lee Ratke. Sure. And it's about acting. So, I mean, you're very vocal. I think you used to have a blog about acting, too.
I did, yeah.
So, what Lee's interested in knowing is a lot of the portrayal of Oliver seems to be really internal. And do you find that challenging, and is it exhausting? So, what sort of elements of that?
Well, it's not exhausting. It's you know, one of the most difficult things that you can do, I think, as an actor is appear. Have those internal moments without coming across as wooden, and you know, I'm glad that people stuck with us in the early going, when there weren't necessarily a lot of redeeming qualities to Oliver. I mean, he was whining on the island and he was brooding in Starling City in the present day, and now, you know, with time and with sort of a better purpose, he's opening up a little bit, and that allows me to do a whole bunch more. You know, also too, I'm a young actor, and you know, I had some experience coming into this, but now, you know, I've worked almost 250, 300 days on the Arrow set, long days, and you have no choice but to get better. You know, I feel myself improving as an actor, as coincidentally and luckily the Oliver that we are seeing in the present day, and even on the island, is becoming more dynamic. You know, because I'm especially interested to, if you think about where we found him in the series, I'm really excited on the island side to take him down that dark path. You know what I mean? And I know that our show will have the guts to do that, to sort of take him to a very menacing spot, because as we found, you know, when we started the series, he came back to Starling City, very, very flawed individual. You know, like no realistic expectations on how he was going to do what he was going to do. He wanted to do it all himself. So from an acting standpoint, it's just exciting, because it's what I love to do, and I get to do it every day, it seems like.
That's amazing. And that's one of the things we're most excited, or I really like, is seeing you sort of play two different characters. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the coolest things I think about the show, is that we get to see the development of both of those characters. And what we see is that it's sort of an opposite trajectory, or at least in terms of how one of them is sort of getting darker and one of them is finding light again.
Yeah,
that's kind of interesting.
And you know, and again, in terms of telling a story, you either want there to be between the flashbacks and the present day, you either want there to be, you know, a very close connection to what's happening, or you want it to be polar opposites, mm-hmm. right? Because I mean, it's easy to link to it if the two things are close, right. And if they're so far away, then the jump you just make it. Yeah. So I'm excited because I know, I mean, we saw little hints of it at the beginning of the season when he killed the guy with the rock, you know, yeah. And that was gnarly and hurt my shoulders. And but there's been a little bit of a respite, but you know, with what happened to Shadow on the island, and you know, with the revelations about, you know, where it seems like things are headed with Slade, mm-hmm. I think you're about to see that character really start down a path that you can't really necessarily come back from.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to ask my own question, because we're fans of Arrow, all three of us, I think, sitting here. And we have our own fandoms that we really like outside of that. I'm just curious what you're a fan of outside of Arrow itself. Do you consider yourself like a geek about certain things?
I think I'm a bit more of a geek. I'm a geek for our show. You know, I'm very proud of it. You know, I just, you know, my wife and I just had our first child, and it's like, you know, that's our first human child, but this was my first sort of, you know, creationary child, and I think is that a word? Did I just make that up?
You know what I mean? Creation baby.
You know what I meant, right?
Yes, exactly.
Right? It's my first artistic child.
There you go.
There you go. That's better. It sounded like sort of biblical before.
I think creationary is a Lego board game.
Right. Okay. But you know, look, I I have become a huge fan of television, principally at the moment, because I think that so many amazing things are happening in the medium. But beyond that, just the making of television, like what I do now with a series like Breaking Bad, for example, is I watch the final season, and the first thing that I do after I finish the final season is watch the final season again. And when I watch it the second time, I'm watching for different things. You know, I'll spend an entire episode thinking about the style of photography, or I'll spend an entire episode watching Bryan Cranston. I mean, even when he's not speaking, I'll just zone in, and I did that with House of Cards. My wife and I are watching Parenthood right now, and like that show's awesome.
Yeah.
And you know, just the performances on that show and the style of that show. I'm just a big fan of well done television at the moment, and I have some things, that are like they're like fine wines that I haven't opened yet. You know, I hear about Sons of Anarchy, and I hear about The Shield. Like, I've heard that there are untapped shows that I need to see. So I'm a big fan of the medium at the moment, and I do wish that I watched more movies. I want to go back and basically watch like every Robert Redford movie ever. You know, and I watch Inside the Actors Studio all the time. I'm a geek for that show, and Saturday Night Live too. I love Saturday Night Live. That's the litmus test for me for any actor. Like Sofia Vergara, for example. If people think that she is just a one-trick pony, I don't know if people think that, but she was awesome on SNL. She was really good, and Kerry Washington this year was really good. On the flip side, there have been some actors that go on there that are really good at playing a character, and you realize like 4 minutes into their appearance that they're really good at playing that character, but that's kind of it. So that's my jam.
Do you want to go on Saturday Night Live?
Oh yeah, that's my dream. I met Seth Meyers, who I assume most people know that he's the head writer there, and he was helping Tina Fey and Amy Poehler write their hosting stuff for the Golden Globes, which Warner Brothers invited me to last year. Very exciting. Very big to do.
Yeah.
I don't typically like to go to things where I'm not nominated or have a reason to be there. My manager's like, when you get invited to the Golden Globes with Warner Brothers, you go to the Golden Globes. Thanks very much. So anyway, I was introduced to him, and I said to him, I'm like, I'm a big fan of the show, and I have to tell you that I really want to host it just in case. And he finished my sentence. Just in case it happens. I get it. I've done similar stuff. I wish all the best to you. And he's like, and good job on the show. I don't know if he's ever seen it, but yeah, no, of course. I'd love to host SNL.
Excellent.
Sort of on the geeky side of things, we were just talking about that. I know that everybody wants to know when we're going to see some more of the gadget arrows and stuff. I know we've seen some stuff. We've seen like the electric ones. I really like the one that you shoot. Like
the Bolo.
Yeah, like the Bolo one.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, because we've got you here, the boxing glove arrow. Are they trying to get it in? Like, is that something that?
Look, Andrew Kreisberg in particular, I feel, I'm a geek about our show. I remember I'm just weird about remembering stuff. But, and I think it was like our 5th episode where, I bring Laurel into my room and she's like, I haven't been here since this such and such a Halloween party, and I wore those horrible fishnets, right? Yeah. I'm like, I thought you looked good in those, right? That's Andrew Kreisberg right there. They're constantly trying to get stuff in, and I don't know what it is, but I would bet a year's salary that at some point in time before the end of our run, I don't know if you'll ever see a boxing glove arrow, but of course there will be like an overhanded, right in your face reference to it.
What I would like is if Felicity, who's sort of responsible for your arsenal at this point, for putting together all these cool things for you, shows you a whole bunch of new arrows, and then on the end there's the boxing glove one. It's like,
yeah, you know what? And there are ways to do it. I mean, just thinking aloud here. I mean, one of the things that we're dealing with this year is Oliver's decision not to kill people means that, you know, he has to find creative ways to knock them unconscious so that they don't come back and cause problems in the middle of a fight. You know, and I could just see us having a conversation like, look, I'm doing my best here, but even if I shoot a guy in the knee and he has a gun, he can still do stuff. He's like, well, try to knock him out more. Well, how do I do that? Well, why don't you put a boxing glove on an arrow or something like that?
Yeah.
And just staring down like, it's the stupidest idea I've ever heard.
I hope it works. I hope it actually gets. Anyway,
yeah,
that'd be fun. That'd be fun.
That's a moment that we'll be waiting for.
Excellent. This has been fantastic, Stephen.
It has.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
To talk to us. I hope everybody listening has appreciated our special episode, and we want to just thank you so much for reaching out to fans. I mean, you're one of the, I guess, you really understand, I think, the fandom around the show, and I think you're really good about reaching out through social media and talking to everybody, so we really appreciate that. I mean, it's one of the reasons we like fandom and being part of a community is because of the people that are part of it, and we feel like you are too, which is kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a you know, it's a new age. I don't you know, I don't criticize actors that don't do it, but it's, I mean, a fandom is right at your fingertips. You know what I mean? And it's great to see people respond well to the show because it's a hard show to make. You know, it's like it's a 200-day shoot, and you know, there's lots of times in between setups where my brain isn't free enough to like read Malcolm Gladwell's new book or something like that, but I can scroll through my Facebook page and see people respond to an episode, and you know, that's very rewarding for me. So I was happy to be able to do this.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Right.
Well, I think that about wraps things up.
It is. If you have comments about the show or more questions, you can email us, mail@quiverpodcast.com. And also jump on all our social media, facebook.com/quiverpodcast and Twitter @quiverpodcast. And Mike and myself both have our own Twitters and stuff. You guys know that from
they
know that. So yeah, it was great to talk to you. It was lovely to meet you, Stephen.
Lovely to meet you guys too.
And can you take us out of the podcast? Do you remember our
Oh,
sign
yes.
off? Yeah.
I'm almost positive that I do. Stay sharp, arrowheads.
Okay.
Awesome.
Very good, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. That was really fun.
Yeah.